Final segment, I want to do a little bit of personal development work with you right now. So, yesterday, I was scrolling through my Facebook feed and I came across a video that was a very short video done by a business coach. And I know this isn't a business group, but within her business coaching program, she's obviously doing a lot of personal transformation work. And what she was talking about was that I think her programs are 12 months long as well. Yes, they are. They're 12 months long. And she said that she has noticed for her and her groups, she has noticed that at the 8-month mark, people would want to quit. Now, that hasn't been the case for me. It hasn't always been 8 months, but for her, it's like 8 months. That's the mile marker when people would want to quit. And what she was explaining is that at that point in her program, that's when people would hit resistance, emotional resistance. Like, this feels hard, I would rather avoid it. And so they would want to drop out. I'm not sure exactly how she was doing her program, or if they were required to do 12 months, or if they could quit anytime. I'm not sure, but I know it was a 12-month program. And she said that people who would hit that resistance would respond in one of two ways. They would either contact her and say that they wanted to quit, or they would, now this, by the way, FYI, this is like a high-end business coach. So these are people that have tons of money, and so keep that in mind. So she said that so there were two groups. One group would just be like, I want to quit, and they would quit, or they would try to quit. And there was another group that she said they would like go on vacation to the beach. That's why I said these are people that have a lot of money. They would just go on vacation to like the Bahamas. I think that's what she said. They'd go on vacation to the Bahamas for 2 weeks. And they would hit the reset button for themselves. And then they would come back and they'd be ready to do the next step. And so I was listening to this. I was like, yeah, it's interesting that she has observed that as well. So I will notice that people will hit a level of resistance with their work, whatever program they're in with me, that they'll hit a point where they feel uncomfortable, and there's some personal resistance that happens. Like I said, it's not necessarily at the 8-month mark like it is for her. It could be after the 1 month, 4 months, 6 months. It's just different for everybody. Okay. And she asked some questions, and as I was just like whatever I was working on, and I had her voice on in the background, in her 5-minute, 10-minute video, whatever it was, she started to say a couple of things, and I was like, oh, I need to write this down. So I don't know if I got it word for word, but this is the gist of it, and I wanted to share it with all of you. This is so juicy. So right now, I don't have anyone who's going through that like resistance, wanting to quit, right? So this is not about anybody. I'm not talking about anybody, whatever. So it's not about you, I promise. But these are great questions. So I want you to ask yourself these questions right now, and these are going to be invaluable for you, not only with your relationship with me and whatever program you're in with me, but for the rest of your life. Like whatever personal transformation work you are ever working through for the rest of your life, these questions are going to be important. Okay, first question. What do you do when you're afraid? What do you do when you're afraid? Now, as I thought about this, I thought, let's split this up into like a split personality kind of answer. So think of like when you're not at your best, when you're not very aware of yourself, how do you respond when you're afraid? Because we all have those times when we're not really aware, we're kind of acting unconsciously out of fear. So what do you do when you're afraid? And then, since we're kind of looking at it from a two personality standpoint, if you're in more of a state of awareness, like you're really grounded and centered, and you hit that point where you're feeling afraid, from that place of being more awakened, more aware, more evolved, from that point of being more evolved, how do you respond when you get afraid? What's your way of responding when you get afraid when you're more aware? Now, the other questions are kind of rewording of the same question, but I'm going to go through all the questions. So when you're acting very unconsciously, when you're really in that state of fear and you're triggered, what do you do when you bail on yourself? What does that look like? What do you do when you bail out, when you bail on yourself? And this is when you're not in a very good state of awareness, when you're acting out of fear. What do you do when you bail on yourself? We all do it sometimes. And then when you're in a state of higher awareness and you're able to step into that observer mode, when you're coming from that state of being, what do you do when you want to bail on yourself, when you want to just escape? What do you do when you want to bail on yourself? When you're more centered and aware, what do you end up doing? Because even when you're very centered and aware and you're feeling very expanded and evolved, because we all have those periods where we're just like super high vibe, very focused in a positive intent, we still hit those resistances. We still get afraid. We still want to bail on ourselves, but we respond differently, right, than when we are not as aware, when we're acting more unconsciously. And the third question, so coming from a place where you're feeling more unconscious, less aware, triggered, fear-filled, how do you respond when you hit resistance? How do you respond? What do you do when you hit resistance, when you feel a whole bunch of emotional resistance, like you've hit a wall? That resistance could look like a lot of different things. It could be like thinking, well, this is dumb, I don't want to do this anymore. That's resistance. It could be boredom, apathy, avoidance, fear. So resistance can, over busyness, life drama, like all of that can show up as resistance that you have drawn to you or created because you're afraid to move forward. So what do you do when you hit resistance? And then when you're in a higher state of awareness, when you're in that place, How do you respond when you hit that energy of resistance? What do you do? So, if you didn't write those down, I encourage you to go back in the video when it's all done and it's posted. I encourage you to write those questions down and just really journal about them. And I added the two parts of your personality aspect, because we all have times where we're really not operating at our best. Like, I have that big time. Some of you have seen that, where I would get like super triggered. Oh my God. So it happens to all of us. So, how would you answer those questions when you're like really not aware? You're not really in that high awareness. You're getting super triggered. You're like, all your alarms are going off. Like, how would you answer those questions? And then how would you answer those questions when you're in that higher state of being? And we've all been there, where we're like able to respond to things in a much more evolved way. Okay? And it's totally fine that you don't always respond to things in that totally evolved way, because we're human. That's just how it is. We're human. But the more awareness that you have, and like working through these questions now, the more awareness that you have, when you have it happen, you're going to go, oh, I see what this is. This is what I do when I get afraid. Okay? Or this is what I do when I want to bail. Or this is what I do. This is that thing that I do when I hit resistance. Okay? So, trying to think of a specific story, and I can't think of one right now, but I've noticed with all the people that I've worked with over the years that there's two kind of responses. There's two types of responses that I will get from people. And first, let me talk about when somebody's thinking about signing up for a program, let's say. You guys are already in my program, but let's say somebody's thinking about, and Anne is saying, I'm so lost, just found my way here. Anne, you can watch the replay. It's all good, honey. I wish I could hug you. Hug, hug, hug. Anne is joining us from Canada. So when someone is thinking about joining one of my programs, and they know, it's like, oh my gosh, I totally need this. Whatever it is, it's like totally aligned for them. And my programs aren't totally aligned for everybody, so I know that. But let's say it's somebody who, like, they feel totally aligned with it, and we're Facebook messaging back and forth. And I'll get two kinds of responses from people. One person will be like, well, let me look at your website, let me see what the information is about. So they'll look at it, and they'll message me back, and they'll say, I can't afford it, never mind. And I have been penniless a couple times in my life. So, like, literally penniless. So I totally know what that's about, okay? But a lot of times the person who's sending me that message is not actually penniless. What's happening is they've hit resistance even before they got out of the gate. And they were like, oh no, oh my God. Because your subconscious mind, when you're getting ready to embark on something that's like so juicy for your consciousness, and your subconscious mind is like, oh my God, that sounds scary. Let's just keep you safe and not go into this journey at all. So the first opportunity that they can, find any reason not to do the program, oh, it's too much money, I don't have it. But then I'll see like the next week, they'll be posting on Facebook that they bought these like really expensive concert tickets. And I don't know all the details of what's going on in their life and everything, but or that they've just booked a vacation or something like that, you know. And I'm like, I don't judge that at all. I just notice it, and I'm like, really, what's going on is that they hit resistance. They said, oh my God, this feels scary, and so they created a story that they can't afford it. So that's one group. Right, that's one response. The other type of people that I've talked to, they'll message me and they'll say, wow, I feel so drawn to do this program. My cat. I feel so drawn to do this. I know this is the right thing for me. Can we hop on the phone and talk about this? Or I'm not sure, I have to rearrange some things, or I'm not sure how I'm going to afford it. I want to brainstorm how to make that happen. And I actually will work with people, like people who are going through, since I've been penniless before, I will, if somebody contacts me and they're like, I'm totally penniless and I know I need this program, like I'll say, let's hop on the phone and let me help you brainstorm and we'll work something out. And so notice there's a difference between somebody who's like, nope, can't do it, like, they hit resistance before they even start, and so they self-select themselves out. No, I can't do that. And then there's people who they see the resistance and they move through it anyway, and they reach out to communicate. And I love that. So rather than saying, I can't do that, they say, how can I do this? They get creative. How can I make this happen? If it's the right fit for them, then they immediately ask, how can I make this happen? And then when people are already in one of my groups, what I'll notice is two different things. So we've got the person acting out of fear and unconsciousness will start to work through some stuff that's scary and uncomfortable for them emotionally, and so they'll be like, laters, I'm out of here, you know, I can't work, I can't do this anymore, I'm done. And usually it's quite abrupt, and it's okay, it is what it is. And then there's other people who will talk with me either in person or will be messaging, and they'll say, wow, I've hit I've had all these feelings coming up, and I know that it's just resistance. And so, like, I've even had people say, oh, here I am at class, and I felt all this resistance. I kept having thoughts all morning that I didn't want to come to class, and I knew that it was just resistance. And so I just was like, nope, and I went ahead and came, and I'm so glad that I did. So it's awesome when people recognize resistance when it's happening, and they go, oh, that's just resistance. Let's just move through it. And I love that. I love, love, love it. So again, no judgment at all about people who have responded maybe with less awareness and more fear-based. We all do that sometimes. But the more that I've seen these different responses to resistance, as I've worked with more and more people over the years, I'm wanting to educate people before the fact, so that when it comes up for you, you'll know what it is. Because if you're not in awareness and then someone tries to point it out to you, it's kind of impossible for most people to see, to be able to hear, to be able to receive what's being shared with them, right? So if you're like totally in resistance and really feeling very unconscious, not very aware, and feeling a lot of fear,